Good afternoon. So today I want to make a hopefully brief video about some things that I was thinking about in regards to this analogy, or it's not really an analogy, it's a story, but it stuck in my mind, and I thought that the story was a really perfect analogy for just people who have issue with God and try to debate. These are inevitably these are the why is there so much bad in the world people. Um, but generally, these are the atheists, the people who just have a beef with the Christian way of things, usually have um, some real vitriol and something that shouldn't really matter at all if it isn't real, but it somehow matters to them that people are talking about it in their vicinity or not. I don't know. They find your video and click on it, whatever. And it was a story, it's a testimony of a person who, um, they were, when they were a little kid, their parents, they went to church, they were Catholic, so they went to Catholic church. And, um, he had a good upbringing, but, it was sort of vaguely religious. And in the interview, he said that he had an issue with God as a child. He remembers being like 5 years old and having this sort of memory of having an issue with God. And um, his issue was that, he noticed that, they were devout and, they went to church and they prayed prayers. And the people around him that were, in his neighborhood, I guess were either non-Catholic or not practicing anything. The implication was that they weren't practicing anything, and also that they were kind of, not nice people, bullies, whatever. The people around him that sort of paid no mind to God in whatever way that meant to him. He would notice that they would, have the better clothes, and that they would, um, around Christmas time, they would be getting, this the awesomest stuff, the best stuff. And, he would sort of get this rundown, hand me down stuff. And he was just kind of like, how come all of these people who don't even pay God any attention are getting like all this cool stuff? And like, we are struggling and we're getting, hand me down clothes and we're just not living the same at the same level as these people who don't even acknowledge God. And so he, at about 5 years old, he said that he basically like turned his back on God from that point. And it really, when he said that story, I was like, that is a perfect analogy, because that is exactly what people are doing. And what he did at 5 years old. And I would hope that anybody who heard that story understands not only why uh, he would think that at 5 years old, but why his observations are off at 5 years old, and that once you have growth and maturity, you come to a greater understanding of things. I mean, I would hope that. Um, because the entire analogy is predicated on you understanding that. So, but imagine, an atheist comes to you and says that, and says they've already got this pent up thing uh, that's been there for decades. First of all, they're not going to let you just pluck it out in an instant with uh, logic and facts. And that's sort of my thing. It's just like, why are we arguing with these people? Like it's so unserious that you think that they would have a conversation with you and they would be ready to sort of overturn their beliefs if they hear something Like they have got this pent up thing that is emotional first and foremost, but then when you hear it, um, it always comes back to basically something like this 5-year-old observation. Now, again, hopefully you understand that yes, there are some people that are going to have some advantages or some seeming advantages. All of these things about what actually matters and what ends up doing the best for your character and all these things. I hope that's all implicit in there. But what I want people to understand is that, like, do you see how even if you were, because it's not just simply like, oh, he was a child and that's a child's mind and blah blah blah. No, it is. It's an idea that has merit. It's a question that has merit. It's a simple question. But you, as an adult, if a child came to you and asked you that, could you answer it? Yeah, you could answer it, but he's not going to like that answer. He's not going to like the answer because the nature of the question has already shown you that he's not going to have time for no patient, wise answer. If he's already butthurt that everybody around him has better stuff, that type of person is not going to really be like, well, in the long run, this is going to be something that's going to give you depth of character and whatever. Like, he's not going to appreciate that anyway, number one. Number two, even if you took another approach, let's say that this 5-year-old had all of you were able to open his mind and give him all of the cognitive capacity of an adult. And you gave him charts and facts and figures, and you laid out line by line why, like literally, why is it that some people have this and some people have that? And you literally just showed him a map of how everyone came to be where they are economically and what your parents did and why they're not able to make as much and whatever. Um, that's not going to probably soften his heart toward God either. So I need people to understand that when people are asking, especially when you're asking other humans and not God the question, you're just unleashing all of your um, inner emotional turmoil on poor, innocent humans that don't have anything to do with your beef with God because you don't believe he exists. So you're just going to like find a flesh and blood human and just spew on them. You're not going to get answers to your question like that. Like, it's not that God doesn't want to answer your question. You're already not in a place, you're not in a place emotionally to hear it. And you're not mature enough to know the fullness of the answer. And even if somebody gave you all the facts and the figures in the way that you say that you desire to get them, like, that's not going to alleviate you're not going to go, oh, okay, well, he's fine. Like, that's not, you're never going to draw that conclusion. So, it's just kind of I won't say that it's a lose-lose situation to try and talk to an atheist or just somebody who is antagonizing towards the gospel. But, I mean, I personally probably wouldn't waste my time on it. I mean, I don't know. It's just the posture makes it almost impossible to receive any of the information that you would need to receive. And if the thing that made you mad about God is something that is just not even in his nature or in his, if you have opposite goals and values, there is no satisfactory answer. Doesn't mean that there isn't an answer. It's not that people can't come up with the answers to give these people. And that everything that Christians say is just dumb and silly. Like, um, and aside from that, like the answer is the answers of God, the things of God are spiritual. And if you are hardened in your heart, like you're not going to receive any of that, like because the devil's going to make sure that you don't, and also your heart is hard. So, um, it's just kind of interesting because the Bible pretty much kind of co-signs that for the most part. I mean, the Bible's got nothing for you if you don't believe. It's just kind of like the fool says in his heart there is no God, and then the only other scripture I can think of is, "Woe to the clay who asked the potter, why did you make me this way?" And it's not woe to the clay because the clay better back up and the clay knows better than to question God. It's like, oh, this poor clay is just going to be going through it and is just suffering for no reason because he's just questioning everything about the potter's process. You're just putting yourself in a state of self torture because it is what it is. You're here, you didn't ask, and um, you know, this life is a gift. But if you're going, well, why did you give me this? Like, you can't receive a gift like that. Like, if somebody gives you something, you're like, well, what am I going to do with this? You can't be grateful unless you learn to accept or whatever that thing that person gave you, and you finally get around to using it where you didn't think you needed it before or that it was ever going to be useful to you ever, and then then you can be grateful for it. But until then, it's pointless. So it's just a matter of not understanding your purpose. You're just gonna be pissed off. And kind of in along these lines, like part of the reason that people think that Christians are sort of bigoted and all these things, especially the way that things have been portrayed. And I'm not saying that we aren't, none of us are, or that there aren't some or whatever. I'm just saying we're all doing the same thing. And it kind of only looks like what we're doing is extra special because of the things about Christianity that stand out. But like, um, what am I trying to say? Like the way that God set up the way that we are, the way that He wants us to be, where we are um, proclaiming the gospel. We're supposed to be evangelistic. We're supposed to be, you know, telling everyone the good news and all this stuff. And the way that the world's just kind of increasingly more and more as values get changed, morals get changed, um, things get forgotten as far as like the way things, traditions and all these other things. Which is something I'm noticing too, is that, people used to pass things down. And I really do think that that is the human, that's our default, is to pass down our knowledge to the next generation, pass everything down. And just the fact that in, the last couple of generations, it's basically been like wipe the slate and then let the new batch come in and relearn everything that we learned with some new added stuff. And, it's just like I'm constantly seeing people get blown away by history. And it's just kind of like, y'all didn't know that? Like, and I know part of it is because we sort of outsourced it to the public school system, and that's bad. And, the early Americans already knew all that. But yeah, so everything's getting memory hold, like within a generation. But also, things are just getting more hostile to the gospel and all that stuff. So I think the world is sort of baffled why we would continue to do a job or why we would continue to be a certain way after it's been expressed by everyone that they don't want to hear what you're talking about. And no one can really understand like why we would do that. Um, I mean, aside from the fact that it's like, okay, well, God told you to do it, so ask yourselves if we should obey God or obey man. I mean, that whole thing. So that's pretty much stayed the same. But also, like, what gives people the fortitude to continue to do something that no one likes for them to do, and everyone's giving you negative feedback upon negative feedback. And the only real groups that are ever portrayed with that kind of attitude is like racists and like bullies. They just have this sort of lack of self-awareness, and they just, or it's like if you're racist, if we're going back in time and we're following the racists and they're just kind of openly being horrible or whatever, at least that's how they're portrayed in movies. I don't think anyone's seen like any historical footage in a very long time, but um, the idea is that they're in the majority, so they have the power and the comfort level to just be awful. Um, and they're fighting for a way of life, blah blah blah. And so these are kind of the only groups that don't seem to conform, or you're just weird, or um, you're mentally ill. These are kind of the only things on this plane that sort of work like that. And so people sort of deduce it's like, okay, well, something must be wrong with them. And you hear all of these like theories, or not theories, but explanations for why Christians are the way they are. And it's just like, this is what happens when you believe in a dogma, or you put all your faith in a religious system, blah, blah, blah. It makes you crazy, right? When really there's something else going on, aside from sort of being powered by God, having the living water inside of you, so you don't need to sort of participate in the things of the world. But also, like, there is a strategy in the way that God has us behave. It's not just, do these things because they're noble, and, be respectful of everyone, and, live at peace with anybody, with everyone as much as you can. And, but, preach the gospel. And if they don't accept it, you shake the dust off your feet. And, um, if you're not to, retaliate, no retaliation, full forgiveness, unconditional love, and, speak respectfully, and, with patience, with, whatever, and all of these things. And I think we misunderstand why God has us do that. We're just kind of like, it's the better thing to do, and this is the better way to be, and the high ground and all that. But really what it does is when you're on the earth, when God comes to earth, and he's looking for people who love him genuinely, people who are going to choose him and love him for who he is. And you're working through a people group where there's no real social advantage to being a part of it. There's no social disadvantage to dogging it out. In fact, you might get a medal. Do you know what I mean? And there's no retaliation from the group itself if you decide to just kind of be off the rails. Like, they aren't allowed to do anything back to you. So he set this thing up where, and this is all like, everything is contributing, like Satan being the god of this world, the way that Jesus came into this world, like all of that is contributing to how this is working out. But when you have that and you pose this system and you ask people if they want God, there's no real incentive to get him. There's no disadvantage to disrespecting him. And the people, there's nothing. There's no social thing. So, and you see this with like a lot of atheists who, I don't know, they seem to think that they're like in uh, some real talk place, like they're really just getting down to brass tacks and really having the hard conversations. It's like you're having hard conversations with sheep, bro. We're not allowed to attack you back. No one cares if you talk mean to us. It's like go try to have this like real world, real hardcore conversation with the people in charge of sex trafficking. Like go talk to, like, if you're really that concerned about all the suffering people in the world, go talk to the people who um, sort of systematically orchestrate the suffering, and then I will be convinced. But like you just talking really loud and disrespectfully to Christians is like the lowest hanging fruit ever. But God wants it that way because he wants to see what people will do. And you're sort of just, you know, you're taking yourself to court. It's like self checkout court. He doesn't have to judge you. Your own words will judge you because all he has to do is just read back what you wrote, what you said. What did you say when it didn't benefit you, but it didn't hurt you either? And there was no earthly incentive or disadvantage to God. And this is what God is trying to do through all of these different things that are going on. Yes, there's evil in the world right now, but there's a lot of good in the world too. And the thing is, like, the evil in the world sticks out to people because they don't know where to put that. But the good in the world just literally just rolls off the back. It's like, yeah, no, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, good things happen to me all the time. They should. They better. Like, I don't know. We just don't. After we're done attributing all the good things to nature and evolution and, uh, our self-conscious or our subconscious mind able to know what we need, and our inner whatever, and karma and good genes and luck, there's nothing left on the table for God to take credit for. So those all get dispersed and distributed to all of these other things. And then we dump the bad things in God's lap and go, well, what and why? What's up with this? Like the Bible does talk, not a lot, and I don't know if it's because this was not a concept that they really struggled with or what, but it does talk about him being in charge of it all. He's in charge of the good and the bad. And, we take the good, we can't complain about the bad type of um, thing, which, some people think is an asinine view. But I think people just need to really go back and tally up the good and then see if they still have that same energy for the bad. If we're going to entertain the idea that God exists and that he is in charge of the bad, then we also have to fill in the entire picture and make him also in charge of the good, which, always gets memory hold, like I said. Like, or just even, a lot of the people who object to the bad stuff is the point of it. What's the point? It's meaningless. Um, you think of the most gut wrenching, horrible story, and that you can just be like, yeah, I have no understanding of why this could possibly be important and or necessary. And again, it kind of just goes back to this 5-year old story about like, well, why do we worship God? Like, how can we get all the crappy stuff? I mean, this is the level of questioning that we're talking about. It doesn't matter that you're 40 years old, and it doesn't matter that you're 5 years old. It's still this kind of like, I'm one person, I'm emotional, and I don't understand why. Like, um, and you can't understand it all. Like the idea that that if God existed out there, he would be able to explain it all to you right now in terms that you understand. Like that doesn't even make sense. But like there's this whole plan in place that God has already talked about uh, in regards to this problem. It's like he's already told us that he's gonna uh, reconcile these things like once this part of it is done, and that you're going to get rewards and your tears are bottled up and vengeance, he'll be taking vengeance. That's why you're not taking vengeance at all, because he's going to do it. And uh, all your thoughts and deeds are recorded, which means everyone else's thoughts and deeds are recorded. So if it's about this person and what they did to you, it's like he made a what do you call it? He made a provision for that. So it's just kind of confusing, or not confusing, but just it's just kind of upsetting that people don't know that, or that people don't. I think the reason why people don't focus on that is because that part is scary, because they're thinking about themselves. So they're thinking like, that it's not, they don't really want to focus on the fact that God is watching your every move, and all of your words and deeds are recorded somewhere. Like the immediate thought goes to like all the bad stuff you did. You're not thinking about how you could possibly be vindicated through that. Not at first. It takes a while to think about that. Like he's got all of our prayers, they're all going up like incense, and they're going to be poured out on the earth at the judgment. Like he's got all of this stuff ready to compensate you with. Like, I mean, it could not say that, but the fact that it does say that shows that like God was thinking about it, is thinking about it as much as you are, and anticipated that you would have those problems. Like you might not like that, and you might not think that's sufficient enough. But I thought of another analogy, because uh, it's kind of like when we see somebody that some horrible thing happens at the airport, or some family member gets decapitated at the stadium or whatever, and then you hear the story and you think, oh well, that person's going to clean up, they're going to get a lawyer, and they're going to get a lawsuit, and they're going to get some compensation. And when you hear the number, the 7.1 whatever, the $3.2 million whatever, and you go, yeah, and you're satisfied with that. Now, obviously, I'm sure that the people involved would much rather have their family member than to have the money. But it is good that when something happens, that we have a system where those people can get justice and get compensated for their pain and suffering. So, but here's the thing about God, like, not only does he have a system of to compensate for your pain and suffering, for your loss, when you get to heaven, you both get the compensation and recover the thing that you lost. Like, that is the idea. So ideally, you should get both. So stop complaining. Like, it's not, stop complaining about God. Like, really, like, get over yourself and get your mind focused, and don't let the pity party take you down and let the devil talk you into some nonsense, because you lost a loved one, you lost this or that. Like, if it's material, if it's you lost something material, he's absolutely going to restore that and then some more as compensation for the loss. If you lost a person, ideally that person's going to be with you in heaven and you're going to have your compensation. Like, the way that this works, you shouldn't lose anything. You shouldn't lose anything. But while you're living this life, you got to be prepared to let go of some stuff and get it later. That whole idea of losing your life, you know, the person who tries to save their life will lose it, but the person who loses their life will save it. Um, is it paradoxical? Yes, but ultimately, what he wants you to do is save your life and also get some more on top of that. Like, you should be you should be able to double your thing and get your initial investment. Like, that is what it should be. So, yes, every loss, all of these bad things that happen are absolutely do not have to be permanent. They can be temporary if you trust God and, um, yes, of course, it's going to look like it's all for nothing. And if you have the wrong group of people around you, they can certainly talk you into that, being the most, um, whatever, the most mature and intelligent way of looking at things. But when you put these two things side by side, these two viewpoints, the secular one, a current secular modern one, and God's timeless eternal one, uh, there's a lot more holes in the secular material one, as there should be, because it just does not encompass all the information, and it's not really designed to. It's designed to make you feel better when you don't have information and you're going off of your decrepit fallen state, um, which is temporary and immediate and short-sighted and an enemy of God. So anyway, that was not as inspired as I would have liked it to be, but I want to listen to it back, and yeah, I might do a redo. We'll see.